Hello, it's Christy, and today I just felt like making something with you for no reason. You know how sometimes you have a plan and you make something creative because you're gonna wear it as a pendant to a thing, or it's part of a costume for cosplay, or it's a present for someone, or you're gonna put it in a show. And other days you just make random swans on a lake for no reason. This is one of those days. I don't know what you're gonna do with it. Maybe it's a brooch, maybe it's a pendant. Maybe you're going to strap it on a headband and wear it to your next hippie gathering of love and joy. I don't know. You'll come up with something good. But in the meantime, let's just have fun and make a swan on a lake with polymer clay. Come on. Here are the tools we're going to need and the supplies for today's project. For the swan, I just use white clay. This is Primo White. Any kind of white polymer clay is great. To make the water blend, I used a mixture of white, peacock, and ultramarine blue. You'll need a little teeny bit of black, a little teeny bit of orange for stuff in the beak, and a little eyeball. This is a glass eye and a little mandrel. It's a teddy bear eye on Amazon. But you could also use a little black seed bead, or a little black crystal, or even a little round glass or stone bead. Then we use some tools, a tile to work on, cutting blade. I've got a couple of sculpture tools that I use all the time. My Gotta Have It tool, my Wow It's Awesome tool, and that's it. You're ready to go. So I'm going to start by making a watery blend. And this is the clays that I've gathered together. Some ultramarine blue, some peacock, white, granite. And my first thing is to kind of wad them all up and just flatten them out with a roller. This is so that it could go into the pasta machine nicely without messing up the gears of the machine. And let's just roll this through and see what this makes. So I'm at the second widest setting, and basically this just smashes everything. Now you notice this is something that's kind of fun, is when you start to blend a color, but you have not preconditioned your clays. Depending on the age of your clays, some are going to really blend, some are going to crackle, and that's cool because that's where we get fun. So now I just sort of fold this stuff up so that the most interesting things are in my face, which in this case is kind of like all of it. So I'm going to fold it again, and I'm running this through at the second widest setting. I don't usually use the first widest setting because that's a little hard on the gears. They're kind of like way out here, and so they're only grabbing a little bit. But when you get the second widest, they're interlocking a little bit more, and it's a bit more stable. So let's run this one through. And here we see that we have a bit more of a mixture. Each time I run this through, it's going to get a little bit more blended. So now I want to look at both sides and see if there's one side better than the other. What I'm wanting to make is a lake kind of background, so something watery. We're going to put a swan on here. So I really want to make sure that I'm getting something that has the most feeling of lake-like water. So let's try this. Now, I like the idea that most of the lines are going this way, which means I'm going to put it through the machine to keep the lines being like this. If I go this way, they'll spread all out, which is nice, but I think we're going to want that ripple effect. So we're getting even a little bit more of that. It's looking quite nice. Again, I'm always folding it up, so the part that amuses me most is right in the front, and I can keep an eye on it. I should have looked on the back side for that other one to see if it was something even more fun, but I'm liking what I see so far. I'm seeing potential for lake in here, aren't you? Let's keep going. This is looking kind of fun. But I'm going to do a little trick right now and see how this works. That's going to be taking one of my tools. This is the Gotta Have It tool, and it's got a nice wide edge here that's got a little bit of a sharp point to it. So I'm going to start pulling on it, and you see what it's doing is it's exposing some little bit of like a makumegani inside. And each time I do that, I'm getting some kind of funky fun ripples. That's because this is made up of layers still. And so it's just opening up the clay so that I can see the layers underneath. Now when I put this through the machine, that should look very interesting. All right, you ready? So see what we have? All that lovely bits. Let's go see what that looks like. Okay, so see what happens here? We're opening up sort of this ripply effect. This really is starting to make that kind of a fun lake-like feel to it. I feel like I don't really want to make it blend too much more than this. This is looking kind of good. I like it. Now I can just do some hand blending in any area that maybe is not as exciting, like for example up here. So now it's a matter of trimming this down into a usable form. So let's get rid of that scraggly bits there. And I like that this is irregular over here, but yet mostly straight. I think we can kind of keep it just like that. Not sure how I feel up here yet. It's kind of nice that it's rough, but it's almost a little too rough in some areas. So why don't I just kind of do a little cleanup here. So I'm keeping it somewhat rough, but not completely. So see what I'm doing there? Now I'm going to try something here. We're going to have our swan in this area here. I'm going to just cut this here. I'll hang on to that because that's a kind of an interesting piece. So let's keep that somewhere. Let me straighten that up. And we're going to take the blade and we're going to just run it like this. And what that does is it makes a little sideways slice where you can almost see layer, 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 and it's kind of an interesting way to finish off one of the edges. It looks just a little bit cool, I think. All right, so now I have what I feel like is a pretty nice background here that our swan can live on. What do you think? Now, because I'm going from a blue clay to a white clay, I want to make sure I wipe off any residue, or else you get kind of a blue swan, which I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but it just may not be what you want. Now I'm going to go kind of, I'm going to make sort of a more artistic version. So I kind of looked up swans and sketched, trying to get this is wrong, trying to get that angle of the neck, and this is more like how the beak and the head should go. So I'm going to try to use my little sketch to guide me. I tend to do that first. It kind of gives me just a feeling for the piece, which I think is good. And this clay is just fresh from the factory, so I'm not even going to condition this stuff. So I want to kind of start with the head. So I'm getting smaller and smaller bits just to get myself familiarized with what I want. And let's roll this out into a bit of a snake. Now this is going to kind of curve up and over in that classic swan look. So here's what I've got. I've got a narrow snake like this that tapers so it's a little wider up at the head end. And my curvature is here. There's a bend right where it meets the body. It comes up and then it curves all the way over. So very pronounced curve like an S here. And then it comes down. We'll put this on here so you can kind of see. So here's the curve as it comes down to where its body will be. And then it has a nice arch to it. And then this will become the head and the beak area. And I'm kind of thinking that this needs to have just a little bit of a indentation from the head to the neck, just a little. And I always try to put a tool mark in there, but then get rid of the tool mark by just gently touching it with my fingers. And let's just set that here. There. And this actually is a little bit too much for the beak, so let's get rid of that. A little bit more like this. So I've cut that off and reshaped that. So it's definitely a little, almost an S. And you see I've got it over here because the rest of that body is going to be up there. All right, so I think this works a little well. We've kind of refined a little bit of a roundness to the head. It's narrowed just a little. The neck has got that lovely swan S. And the eye, according to my research, the eye is actually sort of right about in here. And then there's some coloration around it, and then the beak goes over from there. So let's just put that down like that, and we'll play with that beak next. So I've grabbed just a tiny little bit of orange for the beak. Around the face is black, and some of the black goes down onto the beak. We're going to do that with powders, but right now I've got my little tiny bit of orange, and I'm just going to roll it into a bit of a teardrop. Well, I guess that's more like an oval, that kind of shape. And I'm going to put that right up against here. Let's see about our size there. I think that's going to be a decent looking size. Make this sort of a cone shape. So I've got cone shape, and it's a little flat there, so that it can just lay on the front here. And one of the things that I think looks really good is to have this have a little bit of curvature right here. Okay, so originally I was thinking about using black powder, but I'm realizing at this small of a scale, it's going to be a little difficult to keep the powder where it belongs and not getting all over everything. So we're going to just use a little bit of black clay. And I'm going to first make just like a little snake of this clay that I can put right here. Okay, just right where the beak meets the face. And I'm going to use my tool just to gently tuck that down. Then in the eye area, it has the swans, the pictures that I was looking at, they kind of curve up and around into that eye area. So I'm just going to make a little black ball, press it in place, and put it where it goes right there. All right? And you can blend that in if you like, or you can leave it unblended, whatever makes sense to you. Now, part of it is that's going to look like a really big eyeball, so we want to kind of get our needle tool in here and refine where the eye lives. And what I've got is I've got like a little, these are little glass teddy bear eyes. So they're like a little ball of glass on a mandrel. I like those. You could also use a seed bead. A little black crystal would work great. You could make it blue if you wanted to have a little bit of contrast. But I'm going to just put black on black there and press that in. You can blend this down just a little bit here, and you can blend it around the edges if you want it to be a little bit less stark and maybe a little bit more, I don't know, painterly is maybe the word, but just a little bit more natural and gentle. You can blend that in a little bit. Now we're going to work on this body part. Essentially, swans can fluff their feathers down and just kind of look like a big duck in a way, but they also can have very big sort of fluffy feathers as if they spread their wings up and flap them around. So I'm going to take a fairly big piece here and let's push that in. That would kind of work where the swan would go, but we got to make some body so that it holds up. So let's just take this and press this in place. And let's put a back wing back here. So we get a little perspective. That's going to be back here. Press that down a bit. Now we've got this big front wing situation happening here. And there's going to be a little tail down there. So let's get that tail in there first. So we've got just that little flattened bit. The tail sticks out kind of thusly. A little bit too much there. All right, so we've got tail, we've got back wing. I'm going to take my tool here and I'm going to pull to make this kind of feathery feeling. Let's do the same on the tail. Don't get too crazy on the tail, okay? Keep it just a couple of strokes. It doesn't fan all out. That tail stays a little bit together. And then this, I'm actually thinking it's a little too flat. The shape is good, but it's a little too flat. It's going to get concave. And I don't want that. I want it to stay more like a, you know, a ciabatta bun or something like that. So let's get this. Now, as I press this down, I'm going to keep it kind of thick in the middle there. All right. So I made it too flat before. Let's just do that. So see, there's our little bun. And that goes right up to where that neck comes down into the water. In fact, let's flatten that just a bit so it can come right to the water line, which means I'm seeing a little bit more tail than I need to see there. Let's do this. And now let's make some lines in this thing. So I made a few that just fluff out over here, and now I'm doing some refining here by just pulling with this tool and letting it kind of flick up. Now, this looks like super easy, but it does take a little bit of time to sort of master that. So if you don't get it the first go round, don't even worry about it. Okay, so we have nice fluffy business there. And let's put just a little bit of lines here. So the more you practice at this, the more you'll kind of know how much lines to put in to make the effect you want. Like on this, I'm only going to do just a little right there and just a little here. Any more and he looks like really furry, which we don't want. We want smoothness, but that little bit gives us the look that we want. Now, you'll notice something. There's a little bit of a problem here because I can see those fluff lines into the water, which we would not see, right? And this is also not straight. If it's in the water, he would be floating directly on the water. So let's fix both of those things. First of all, let's take our blade and let's cut this straight down and pull that away. Okay? Now there's a problem there, isn't there? Because the water's way down here, but this line is right here. So that seems like we need a little bit more. Luckily, we saved some, didn't we? So let's just see if this looks fun, adding some more on for the water. And we'll be able to blend this all in very nicely. Let's make that overlap a little bit right there. Now let's blend that together. So now our swan is just sitting on the water. And I'm not blending it all the way. I'm leaving this like a painterliness where it's got streaks and striations. Think of like impressionistic painting where your lines of the paint are visible as part of the decoration of the piece. And it becomes a part of the whole piece because of that. Now, we can go ahead and cut this sideways just like we did over here. And finish that up. I think that works rather nicely. Let's look at it and see. How do we like seeing the water just cut away right there? Does that seem too odd to you, too abstract? If it does, then you can cut it straight in, or you could leave that thing sticking out. I like it sticking out over here. I think that's kind of cool. In fact, I may want to add just a little bit more of that so you get the idea that it's kind of maybe like little splashes off in its wake. Just let's blend this in very carefully. Don't get into the white. That's a little bit too long. Take some of that away. And one thing I've noticed is if it's sticking out like that awkwardly, just stick another little piece of clay underneath it. That will hold it up at the right level. Press them together and look ultimately much better. So it's a good thing we saved that extra, isn't it? And then we have our little swan floating delightfully on the lake. And last thing is we're going to clean up, mentioned to you before, that we had these little lines left over from the feathers. We're going to do the same thing with them. We're going to just take our tool and blend everything in so that there's a texture in the water, which I think you can easily see. And that will make these little lines of the feathers go away. All right, let me clean this all up, spin it around, and there we have a finished swan in its little lake environment in a painterly style. So when your piece is all done, all you've got to do is put it in the oven to bake. You know the drill with polymer clay. You preheat your oven according to the directions and the temperature on your packaging. You put it in for the amount of time that it requires. For Primo, I'm cooking at 275 degrees Fahrenheit, 130 degrees Celsius, and about 45 minutes is perfect for this thickness. And let it cool completely, then it should come right off the tile, and you can add a hanging thing in the back, or you can incorporate it into a larger wall piece. And there you have it, a swan on a lake. I hope you had fun. Happy creating. Bye.